Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Have you ever had one of those days where you sit in your car after leaving a family gathering, or maybe after coffee with a friend, and instead of feeling connected, you feel like the life has been drained right out of you? You turn the key, but instead of driving away, you just sit there gripping the steering wheel, wondering why you feel so tired when all you did was listen and smile. It's not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. It's a soul-level exhaustion that whispers, "Something isn't right here." Most women know this feeling intimately, though we rarely talk about it out loud. We've been conditioned for decades to put on the good face, to nod, to carry the conversation, to smooth the tension, to absorb the sharp edges of other people's moods so that everyone else feels more comfortable, even if it leaves us in pieces. I think of the countless moments when a woman will say, "It's fine, I'll do it," even though her calendar is full, her body is aching, and her heart is quietly begging for rest. She shows up because that's what's expected. She makes the meal, she takes the call, she solves the problem no one else wants to touch. And yet, after all of that, what she's left with isn't gratitude or joy, it's depletion. She feels invisible, and deep down she wonders, why am I the one who always has to carry it? Why do I feel guilty if I choose myself? That guilt is so heavy, and it's one of the most universal struggles I hear when women finally get honest about what's really going on beneath their perfectly composed exteriors. It's the struggle of giving your energy away without even realizing you had the right to keep some for yourself. We don't arrive at this struggle by accident. Most of us were raised with subtle but powerful messages about what it means to be good. A good daughter is selfless. A good wife is accommodating. A good mother sacrifices without complaining. A good friend is always available. And here's the thing, none of these qualities are bad in themselves. Love, generosity, and service are beautiful. But when they are demanded instead of chosen, when they become obligations instead of offerings, when they drain rather than enrich, they turn toxic. And that toxicity shows up as resentment, burnout, and the quiet belief that you don't have permission to protect your own energy. Think about the times in your life when you've tried to say no. Maybe you whispered it softly, maybe you stammered through it, maybe you even rehearsed it in the mirror before picking up the phone. And yet the moment you said, "I can't," someone gave you that look, or worse, that sigh. That said, "Really? After all I've done for you." Suddenly, instead of feeling proud of your boundary, you're flooded with shame. And so, to avoid that discomfort, you go back to saying yes. Yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll show up. Yes, I'll give you my time, my energy, my presence. Even when I don't have any left for myself. Over time, this pattern becomes so ingrained that many women don't even realize they're allowed to question it. It just becomes the way things are. But what if it isn't the way things have to be? What if the exhaustion, the resentment, the invisible ache you carry isn't a sign that you're failing, but a sign that you've been carrying far too much that was never yours to begin with? That shift in perspective is powerful because it means you are not broken. You are not too sensitive. You are not ungrateful. You are not selfish for feeling depleted. You are human. And being human means you have limits, you have needs, and you have the right to honor them. There's a story I once heard about a woman who always hosted holiday dinners for her extended family. Every year, she'd cook for 20 people, clean her house from top to bottom, manage the schedules, and hold the entire event together. And every year, she ended the night sitting alone in the kitchen with a sink full of dishes and tears in her eyes. She loved her family, but the cost to her energy was enormous. One year, her body simply refused to cooperate. She was exhausted before the holiday even arrived. So she made a bold decision. She told her family she wouldn't be hosting that year. Some were disappointed, some even angry. But here's what happened. She gave herself a quiet Christmas, and for the first time in decades, she experienced peace. Later, she reflected, "It wasn't the end of the world. My family still had Christmas, but I finally had rest." That moment didn't just restore her energy, it rewrote her understanding of what she was allowed to do for herself. We don't always need a dramatic story like that to wake us up. Sometimes it's the smaller moments, the phone call you don't return right away, the extra project you decline at work, the social invitation you pass on because your soul craves solitude. Each of those decisions chips away at the lie that you owe everyone access to your energy. Each small boundary whispers to your heart, you matter too. And every time you honor that truth, you reclaim a piece of yourself that you once thought you had to give away. What I want you to hear, more than anything, is that you are not alone in this struggle. The quiet fatigue you feel is not something to be ashamed of. It's a sign that your spirit is asking for care. And the beautiful thing is, you have the power to respond. You have the ability to say, I don't have to give my energy to everything and everyone. I can choose where it goes. That shift is where hope lives. That's where transformation begins. Because when you finally allow yourself to step out of the role of constant giver and into the role of protector of your own energy, you begin to experience life differently. You begin to notice moments of peace that were once buried under obligation. You begin to taste freedom in places where you once only felt pressure. And you begin to see that saying no is not a rejection of others. It's an affirmation of yourself. That's the doorway I want to invite you through today. The doorway that leads from exhaustion into empowerment, from depletion into peace, from silence into a steady, quiet strength. And it all begins with the simple but radical belief that you don't owe anyone your energy. So let's talk about the heart of the struggle. The thing that quietly eats away at women's peace without always having a name. The problem isn't simply that you feel tired. It's not just that you overcommit, or that you're bad at saying no. The deeper issue is that for so much of your life, you've been taught that your energy doesn't belong to you. It's been treated like community property, something for your family, your workplace, your friends, your partner, your children, your church, your neighbors. Everyone feels entitled to it, and over the years, you've absorbed the belief that this is just how life works. You've internalized the idea that your worth is tied to your ability to keep showing up, keep saying yes, keep giving even when your own tank is empty. And here's where it gets complicated. Many women don't even realize this pattern until much later in life. In your 20s and 30s, maybe you could manage it. You had the stamina to stretch yourself thin. You could push through the exhaustion, tell yourself you'd catch up on rest later, convince yourself that this was just a busy season. But by the time you reach midlife, something shifts. Your body starts whispering louder. Your patience wears thinner. You realize that constantly running on empty isn't just unsustainable, it's dangerous. It costs you your health, your joy, and sometimes even your sense of identity. The very things you thought were expected of you, selflessness, availability, endless giving, become the same things that quietly erode your spirit. The world doesn't often validate this pain. Instead, it normalizes it. We have sayings like, she's the rock of the family, or she holds everything together. And on the surface, those sound like compliments. But think about what they really mean. Being the rock often means you're carrying everyone else's weight while no one carries yours. Holding everything together means you don't get the luxury of falling apart, even when you desperately need to. And over time, that pressure creates a dangerous silence. You start pretending you're okay when you're not. You start swallowing your resentment because you don't want to be seen as ungrateful. You start telling yourself, this is just how life is for me, even though deep down you know it isn't fair. It's important to say out loud that this problem is not a personal flaw. It's not that you're too weak, too nice, or too indecisive. It's that you've been living in a culture that mislabels sacrifice as virtue and guilt, trips you when you dare to choose yourself. We rarely stop to question why women are expected to absorb everyone else's stress, why they're expected to clean up the emotional messes in families, why they're shamed for drawing a line around their energy. Instead, the narrative often says, if you feel exhausted, just take better care of yourself, as though self-care is a bubble bath once a month rather than a complete shift in how you're allowed to exist in relationships. And I want to validate something that so many women feel but don't often say. It hurts. It hurts to realize that some people only reach out when they need something. It hurts to notice that your presence is expected but rarely appreciated. It hurts to admit that the people you've given the most to are sometimes the ones who respect your boundaries the least. That pain is real, and pretending it doesn't exist only deepens the wound. When you walk into a room and instantly feel your shoulders tighten, your stomach knot, your energy drain, that's not your imagination. That's your body telling the truth before your mind catches up. One of the most misunderstood parts of this problem is how invisible it can be. From the outside, everything looks fine. You smile at family dinners. You show up at work, reliable as ever. You're the friend who remembers birthdays, the daughter who calls every week, the one who remembers who needs what. No one sees the inner conflict that comes with constantly saying yes when your soul is begging for no. No one sees the way you collapse at night, drained not just from the tasks you did, but from the emotional weight of doing them for people who never pause to ask, "How are you? What do you need?" And because they don't see it, they assume you're fine. They assume you're strong. And the cycle continues. Here's another layer of the problem. When women finally begin to notice the toll and even consider protecting their energy, they often hit an emotional wall of guilt and fear. You think to yourself, what will they say if I stop showing up? Will people think I'm selfish? Will they call me difficult? Will I lose relationships? These fears are valid because, truthfully, not everyone will respond well to your boundaries. Some will resist, some will push harder. Some may even accuse you of changing, and that is terrifying, especially if your identity has been wrapped up in being the one who's always there. But let me be clear, the problem isn't that you want to protect your energy. The problem is that you've been taught to believe you don't deserve to. The problem is that the world has convinced you that self-protection equals selfishness, when in reality, self-protection is the foundation of a healthy life. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot nurture relationships from a place of resentment. You cannot show up authentically when you are chronically depleted. So many women tell themselves, it's just easier to give in. And yes, in the short term, it is easier. It avoids conflict. It keeps the peace. But what about the long term? What about the quiet bitterness that builds inside you? What about the physical toll, your blood pressure, your sleep, your immune system that suffers because of stress? What about the fact that one day, you'll look back and realize you lived a life shaped more by obligation than by joy? That is the deeper cost of giving your energy away unchecked. And here's the heartbreaking part, because this problem is so widespread and normalized, many women don't even believe there's another way. They think this exhaustion is simply what being a good woman looks like. They think their needs are luxuries, not necessities. They think boundaries are walls instead of bridges. That's why naming the problem matters so much. Because once you can see it for what it really is, not weakness, not selfishness, but a systemic expectation, you can start to challenge it. So the real problem isn't just that you're tired. The problem is that you've been living under the weight of expectations that were never yours to carry. The problem is that you've been giving away your energy like it doesn't belong to you, like you don't have the right to hold it close and protect it. And until we name that problem clearly, it will keep stealing your peace. But once you see it, really see it, you can't unsee it. And that's where change begins. Now that we've named the problem, let's step into the insight, the moment where perspective shifts and understanding begins to take root. The truth that many women discover, often after years of exhaustion and resentment, is both liberating and surprising. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it is essential. It is not a betrayal of love, care, or connection. It is an act of courage and clarity. Most of us were taught that self-sacrifice equals virtue. We learned that saying yes was a moral duty and that prioritizing ourselves was somehow wrong. But the deeper truth is counterintuitive. When you preserve your energy, you are actually capable of giving more deeply, more meaningfully, and with a presence that is genuine rather than depleted and resentful. Think about this for a moment. When you are constantly giving to others without attending to your own needs, what you are offering is a version of yourself that is drained, distracted, and emotionally flat. You may be physically present, but your soul is elsewhere, your mind is elsewhere, and your heart is quietly begging for acknowledgement. In contrast, When you consciously protect your energy, even in small ways, something remarkable happens. You become fully present in your interactions. Your love, your attention, your kindness are no longer diluted by depletion. They are concentrated, intentional, and powerful. This is a truth that few are ever taught. Yet it is transformative once you experience it. I remember a woman sharing her story with me that illustrates this point perfectly. She had spent decades as the go-to person in her family and community, always the first to offer help, the first to lend an ear, and the one who would drop everything at a moment's notice for someone else. On the outside, she looked like she had it all together, respected, reliable, admired. On the inside, she was crumbling. She would wake up with a sense of dread, knowing that her day would be consumed by everyone else's needs before she could even think about herself. Her energy was gone before noon. Her creativity, her joy, her own desires were long buried under the weight of obligation. And then one day, after years of quietly struggling, she decided to experiment with saying no. Just small things at first. A request that wasn't urgent, a social invitation she didn't have the energy for, an extra task at work that could be delegated. What she discovered astonished her. The world did not end. Her relationships did not collapse. In fact, many people respected her more because she had the courage to draw a line. More importantly, she discovered that when she said yes, it was from a place of choice, not exhaustion. Her presence was fuller. Her attention was sharper. Her love felt lighter, freer, and more nourishing to everyone around her. That is the counterintuitive truth. Boundaries are not barriers to connection. They are the bridge to deeper, more authentic relationships. Another insight that often surprises women is how much energy we give away unconsciously. We think we are helping, but many times we are reacting. Absorbing other people's moods, carrying their anxiety, taking responsibility for their emotions, and managing their discomfort as if it were our own. It is a subtle, almost invisible form of depletion. You may not even notice it at first because you've been conditioned to equate this constant caretaking with love and loyalty. But over time, this invisible giving erodes your inner resources. You begin to feel irritable, anxious, and disconnected from yourself. You begin to wonder if the exhaustion is simply who you are. And the revelation comes when you realize that much of this energy drain is not required, not deserved, and not even your responsibility. I once spoke with a woman who had been supporting a friend for years, always ready to listen, to solve problems, and to be the emotional anchor. She loved this friend, but she noticed that every interaction left her feeling heavy and drained. She started to observe the pattern, asking herself quietly, whose energy am I carrying here? Who is actually responsible for this? And the insight hit her like a lightning bolt. She had been carrying the weight of someone else's choices and emotions as if they were hers. The moment she acknowledged this, she realized she could step back, not abandon the friendship, but protect herself in a way that allowed both of them to exist fully and independently. By choosing to release what wasn't hers to carry, she found freedom, clarity, and even a deeper love that wasn't entangled with exhaustion. This is why protecting your energy is not about being unkind, distant, or indifferent. It's about understanding that love is not measured by the quantity of time or energy you give away. It is measured by the quality of presence and authenticity you bring when you are fully intact. The more intact you are, the more capacity you have to engage, connect, and contribute. That is the hidden, counterintuitive wisdom. Restraint can amplify impact. Saying no when needed can make a yes more meaningful. Guarding your boundaries can make your love stronger, not weaker. And it is worth emphasizing that this is a learned skill. Most women have been trained to overgive, to undervalue themselves, and to feel guilt at the mere thought of prioritizing their own energy. Changing this requires courage, reflection, and practice. It requires learning to notice the invisible ways your energy is siphoned through conversations, obligations, social expectations, and even subtle pressures from those you love. It requires honoring the small signals. Your body telling you that something is off, your mind urging you to pause, your heart whispering that it's time to step back. When you listen to these signals and act on them, you are practicing radical self-respect, and that practice changes everything. One of the most powerful insights women often discover is that when they protect their energy, they inadvertently teach others to do the same. By modeling boundaries, self-respect, and intentional presence, they create an environment where healthy expectations replace entitlement. People begin to treat them differently, not out of fear, but out of respect. And the relationships that survive this shift, because some will resist and push back, become more authentic, more balanced, and more nourishing. The emotional cost of overgiving is replaced with the emotional reward of conscious choice. Finally, it is important to recognize that this insight is deeply liberating because it reframes guilt and obligation. You begin to understand that the discomfort you may feel when you protect your energy is not a sign of wrongdoing. It is a sign of growth. It is the signal that you are stepping out of conditioned patterns and into your own power. And as you continue to practice this, the feeling of depletion gradually gives way to vitality, clarity, and presence. You realize that your energy is not an infinite resource to be drained by others. It is a sacred currency to be managed with intention, invested wisely, and honored above all else. The truth, then, is simple but profound. Protecting your energy is not just a strategy for survival. It is the key to thriving. It is the doorway to authentic relationships, meaningful work, and deep personal fulfillment. And once you see it, once you understand it, you can never go back to giving yourself away unconsciously. This insight, this quiet revolution in perspective, is the foundation for everything that follows. The choices you make, the boundaries you set, and the life you ultimately create. Now that we understand the problem and have glimpsed the insight, the next step is the solution, the tangible, practical ways you can reclaim your energy and begin to live fully in your own life without guilt, without fear, and without sacrificing your well-being for the sake of others. The first thing to recognize is that protecting your energy does not have to be dramatic. It doesn't require confrontation, fiery declarations, or cutting people off entirely. Sometimes the most powerful acts are quiet, subtle, and deeply intentional. They begin with awareness, listening to yourself, noticing the moments when your body tightens, your stomach knots, or your heart begins to race. These are the signals your inner wisdom has been giving you for years, and the first step in the solution is simply to pay attention. Pay attention to where your energy goes. Reflect on your daily life and the interactions that leave you feeling drained versus those that leave you feeling energized. You might notice patterns you've long ignored. Perhaps it's a family member whose conversations always leave you exhausted, a coworker who monopolizes your time, or a friend who only reaches out when they need something. The act of noticing is powerful because it allows you to take ownership of your energy. When you can name where it is being depleted, you can begin to make conscious decisions about what you allow into your life. The next part of the solution is learning to say no, not in a defensive or apologetic way, but as a deliberate, clear, and confident choice. This can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to being the one who always says yes. Start small. Practice saying no to minor requests, situations, or obligations that do not serve you or that will drain your energy unnecessarily. For example, if someone invites you to a gathering when you are already exhausted, simply say, "I appreciate the invitation, but I won't be able to make it." You don't need to over-explain, justify, or feel guilty. Your energy is yours, and protecting it is a legitimate and necessary choice. An important part of saying no is detaching from guilt. Many women are so conditioned to feel guilty for prioritizing themselves that even the thought of setting boundaries triggers anxiety. But here's the truth. Guilt is not a reliable indicator of wrongdoing. Guilt is often the echo of old patterns, societal expectations, and unexamined beliefs. It is a tool that keeps you trapped in overgiving. When you recognize guilt as a signal to examine your motives, rather than a judgment of character, you begin to liberate yourself from it. You begin to see that saying no is not unkind, it is honest, it is truthful, it is self-respecting. Another powerful practice is to create intentional pauses in your life. Your energy is finite, and without deliberate moments of rest and reflection, it will continue to be siphoned away. Schedule time for yourself, even if it is just a few minutes a day, to breathe, to reflect, to journal, or simply to sit in quiet. These pauses are not indulgent. They are restorative. They remind you that you exist beyond your obligations and that your presence is valuable even when you are not performing for anyone else. it is also crucial to set boundaries with people who consistently drain your energy. This doesn't mean abandoning relationships, but it does mean being honest about your limits. If someone repeatedly asks more from you than you are able or willing to give, consider having a conversation that sets clear expectations. You might say, "I care about you, but I need to step back from this situation for my own well-being." People often resist boundaries initially, especially if they have been accustomed to unlimited access to your energy. But those who truly value and respect you will adapt, and the relationships that survive this process will be healthier, more balanced, and more authentic. One of the most effective strategies is to prioritize energy investments, treating your attention and effort as precious resources. Consider carefully where you spend your time, who you spend it with, and what activities you engage in. Ask yourself, does this interaction, task, or commitment nourish me or deplete me? Does it align with my values, my goals, and my well-being? Over time, making these choices becomes intuitive, and you naturally gravitate toward relationships and activities that support rather than drain you. It is equally important to practice saying yes to yourself. Protecting your energy is not only about refusal, it is about affirmation. Affirmation of your worth, your desires, and your needs. Schedule moments for the things that bring you joy, peace, and fulfillment. Engage in activities that fill you up, not because they are productive or socially approved, but because they feed your soul. Whether it's a walk in nature, a creative hobby, meditation, or simply time to do nothing, saying yes to yourself strengthens your resilience and replenishes the energy you will inevitably share with others. Another practical step is to cultivate a support network that respects and honors your boundaries. Surround yourself with people who celebrate your growth, who ask how you are, who give as much as they take. These relationships become safe spaces where you can replenish your energy, practice being fully yourself, and model healthy boundaries without fear. You may discover that as you protect your energy, some relationships naturally fade while others deepen in ways you could not have anticipated. This process is part of reclaiming your power, not a punishment for others. Lastly, recognize that protecting your energy is a lifelong practice, not a one-time event. You will encounter new challenges, new people, and new situations that test your boundaries. Each time this happens, it is an opportunity to reaffirm your commitment to yourself. Each time you choose yourself, you reinforce the truth that your energy matters, that your presence matters, and that you have the right to live a life that is intentional, balanced, and whole. As you implement these strategies, you will notice a shift. The constant fatigue begins to lift. The quiet resentment melts away. You start to feel lighter, freer, and more present in your own life. Decisions become easier, relationships more authentic, and your sense of self stronger than ever before. You begin to realize that protecting your energy is not about depriving others. It is about creating the conditions for real, meaningful, and sustainable connections. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to understand that your energy is sacred. It is not an obligation to be distributed at the whims of others. It is a resource to be managed, invested, and cherished. By treating it as such, you step into a life of integrity, self-respect, and authenticity. You step out of the cycle of depletion and guilt, and into a rhythm that honors both your humanity and your capacity to love. This is not an abstract idea. It is practical, actionable, and transformative. Imagine for a moment that you have reached the other side of this journey. Not just understanding your need to protect your energy, but truly living it. Picture waking up in the morning with a sense of calm, not because your life is suddenly free of responsibilities, but because you know your energy is yours to manage. You feel lighter, not weighed down by the expectations of everyone else. You notice how different it feels to move through the day when you are no longer constantly on edge, constantly anticipating the demands of others before even considering your own needs. There is a sense of clarity that comes with this freedom. A quiet power that you can feel in the way you carry yourself, in the way you speak, and in the way you interact with the world. When you protect your energy consistently, you begin to experience a profound shift in your relationships. People respond differently when you are fully present instead of depleted. Conversations are no longer exhausting obligations. They become exchanges filled with intention, care, and authentic connection. You notice the subtle but significant difference in the energy you bring to each interaction. It is no longer borrowed from others or stretched thin by overcommitment. Your latter feels genuine. Your attention feels undivided. Your empathy flows naturally because it is rooted in fullness, not scarcity. The people who truly belong in your life will meet you there, and those who cannot adjust will drift away, leaving space for healthier, more reciprocal relationships to take root. This transformation is not just relational, it is deeply personal. You begin to reclaim aspects of yourself that may have been buried under years of overgiving and self-neglect. Your hobbies, passions, and dreams are no longer luxuries, but vital parts of your life. You may start painting again, writing, exercising, meditating, or even simply sitting quietly with a cup of tea without feeling guilty. Each act of self-care is a declaration I am worthy of my own energy. I am allowed to prioritize myself. I am allowed to live a life that reflects my values and nourishes my soul. With each choice, you reinforce the truth that your presence in the world is valuable, not because of how much you give, but because of the integrity and authenticity you bring when you are fully present. Perhaps the most profound change, though, is internal. Your mindset shifts. The old voices of guilt, obligation, and fear no longer dominate your thoughts. You stop measuring your worth by how much you can do for others and start measuring it by how well you honor yourself. You recognize that protecting your energy is not selfish. It is a fundamental aspect of living a healthy, balanced, and empowered life. This realization brings peace. It quiets the inner critic that once told you that you were too much or not enough. It replaces anxiety with confidence, self-doubt with clarity, and fatigue with vitality. You begin to understand that the most radical act of love you can practice is loving yourself fully, consistently, and without apology. You also notice the ripple effects of this transformation. By protecting your energy, you inspire others to do the same. Your children, friends, family, and colleagues see what it looks like to honor oneself without guilt, to set boundaries without fear, and to engage with the world from a place of fullness rather than depletion. You may even notice that people treat you with more respect, not because you demand it, but because your self-respect radiates outward. You become a model of healthy living, a quiet yet powerful demonstration that balance, boundaries, and self-care are not optional. They are essential. Another remarkable aspect of this transformation is the way you navigate challenges. Life does not become easier, but your capacity to handle difficulty grows exponentially. When faced with conflict, stress, or unexpected demands, you approach these situations from a place of clarity rather than panic. You know your limits and you respect them. You recognize that your energy is finite, and you make deliberate choices about where and how to invest it. You no longer react reflexively to the expectations of others, but respond thoughtfully to what aligns with your well-being and your values. This is not arrogance or detachment, it is wisdom, self-awareness, and groundedness. The transformation also allows you to experience deeper joy and gratitude. Because you are no longer drained by overcommitment. You can savor moments fully, the laughter of a friend, the quiet of a morning, the satisfaction of a task well done. Your life becomes richer not because it is filled with more, but because you experience it more fully. You notice colors, textures, sounds, and sensations that were previously overshadowed by fatigue and obligation. Simple pleasures become profound because your attention is no longer scattered. You realize that happiness is not found in constant giving or endless doing. It is found in presence, in boundaries, and in the conscious management of your energy. And perhaps most importantly, you develop self-compassion. You forgive yourself for the years you spent overextending, for the times you neglected your own needs, and for the moments when guilt kept you from saying no. You understand that those experiences were part of your journey, and that they do not define you. Self-compassion allows you to move forward without carrying the heavy burden of past mistakes. It allows you to embrace your humanity fully, including your limits, your vulnerabilities, and your strengths. By practicing self-compassion, you reinforce the habit of protecting your energy not out of fear or avoidance, but out of love and respect for yourself. Finally, imagine the cumulative effect of living this way over months and years. You are no longer exhausted at the end of the week. You feel alive, engaged, and connected to yourself and your life. You are no longer a shadow moving through other people's expectations. You are fully present, fully awake, fully empowered. You experience the subtle but profound satisfaction of knowing that your energy is yours to manage and that every interaction, every task, and every choice reflects your values, priorities, and boundaries. Your life feels intentional. Your relationships feel reciprocal. Your days feel vibrant. This is the transformation that comes from protecting your energy. It is not a single moment, but a process, a journey of awareness, courage, and self-respect. It is the shift from exhaustion to empowerment, from resentment to authenticity, from obligation to intentionality. And it is available to every woman who is willing to acknowledge her right to prioritize herself, to honor her limits, and to live with presence and integrity. So I invite you to picture this life for yourself. Feel the lightness of energy reclaimed. Sense the strength in your boundaries. Experience the peace of a heart that no longer carries what was never yours. Let that vision guide your choices, your actions, and your commitment to yourself. Protecting your energy is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And in choosing it, you are not only transforming your life, but you are also lighting a path for others to follow. Your presence, your vitality, and your authenticity are the greatest gifts you can offer, and they begin with the simple, powerful act of honoring your own energy.